It is rivalry week, also known as the regular season finale. Johnny Talk Sports into bringing my Week 13 college football predictions, and what a week we are set up with. It all starts Thanksgiving night with the Egg Bowl. We also have the Iron Bowl, we've got Bedlam, and we have the game of the week, one of the biggest games of the college football season with Ohio State and Michigan in the game. But before I get to my picks, another week of the college football season has wrapped up, which means it's time for a new top 10 ranking. There was movement in this top 10, but no movement towards the top, as Georgia remains number 1 and Ohio State remains number 2. At number 3, I have Cincinnati, and Cincinnati picked up a really impressive win over SMU this past weekend. As these last couple of weeks, Cincinnati, they have been winning in pretty dominant fashion, as one of their biggest issues were not being able to get the style points, not being able to dominate from start to finish. They did struggle a little bit to win in dominant fashion in South Florida, but they were more dominant the further on that game went a couple weeks ago, and then completely dominating against SMU, who has been in and out of the top 25 all year long. Pretty solid victory for the Bearcats. Number 4, Alabama. They picked up a solid win against Arkansas over the weekend. Although, I gotta respect more that Cincinnati, they have a better win than Alabama does, because Alabama's best win this season is against Ole Miss, while Cincinnati's best win of the year is against Notre Dame, who I have ranked higher in this top 10 than Ole Miss. Number 5, Michigan. Number 6, Notre Dame. Number 7, Oklahoma State. Number 8, Ole Miss. Number 9, Baylor. And number 10, Oklahoma. They round out this top 10. Now that my top 10 ranking for the week is out of the way, let's get right to the Week 13 college football predictions. Starting things off with the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving night, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, one of the newer traditions of Thanksgiving, as these two teams have been playing on Thanksgiving night in the Egg Bowl every Thanksgiving for about the last 5 years. And not only do we have a great quarterback battle on our hands, but let's give it up for the coaches. Two of the biggest personalities in all of college football duking it out on Thanksgiving night, Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach. But anyway, back to the overall game itself. Great quarterback battle. And nobody seems to really talk about Will Rogers that much, but he is second in the FBS in passing yards with over 4,100. While Matt Corral, he's been a Heisman contender throughout the entire season, 3,100 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. So he is playing some really clean football this season. He has been all season long. And he also has 10 rushing touchdowns and 552 rushing yards. And Matt Corral is a big reason why Ole Miss is 5th in total offense this season, averaging about 518 yards per game. And also the depth at running back for Ole Miss, Jerrion Ely, Snoop Connor, and Harry Parrish. All 3 of them are averaging more than 5 yards per carry. And the reason why that is a big key for this game is because Mississippi State is 7th in stopping the run in all of college football. So if Mississippi State is going to pull off this upset, they have got to contain the running game. And despite Will Rogers having a bunch of passing yards, being second in the FBS in passing yards this season, Mississippi State is 6th in the country in time of possession. So can they sustain drives, keep Matt Corral and the Ole Miss offense on the sideline? With what's at stake here, not only bragging rights, a nice trophy, but for Ole Miss, perhaps a spot in a New Year's Six Bowl. Mississippi State, they can also play spoiler. And this is why you love rivalry weekend. Just throw out the records, throw out most stats, honestly. Stats sometimes aren't that relevant when it comes to rivalry games, but I think there are still relevant stats here as well. I think Mississippi State will be able to sustain drives and keep the Ole Miss offense on the sidelines, as one of Ole Miss's weaknesses throughout the year has been the run defense. So if the Bulldogs can get some running game going, then I like their chance to pull off an upset. But I'm going to go with Ole Miss to win this one. But I think Mississippi State, they make this game close. I think it's only going to be a one-possession game. And I will be surprised if it's anything more than that. I have a couple of Friday afternoon games on slate to predict this week, and this is one of the two, Iowa and Nebraska. And I will guarantee one thing before making a prediction. This is going to be a close game. The last 3 times these two teams have met, the 3 games have been decided by a combined total of 12 points. And 2 of those 3 games have been decided by an Iowa last-second field goal. Nebraska, they have been close to beating Iowa. Iowa has 6 consecutive wins against the Huskers, but in the last couple of meetings, they have been knocking on that door, but they just can't get that door open. And if 1 or 2 things go differently in one of those 3 games, perhaps they would have beaten Iowa. And this season, both of these teams, I think, despite their records, I think they stack up to each other pretty evenly. Because both of these teams, they have appeared to get carried by their defense all year long. When we look at Iowa, the thing that we notice first is their defense. 12th in total defense this season and 6th in scoring defense. However, their offense has been completely anemic all season long. 124th in total offense. While Nebraska's offense hasn't been necessarily anemic, as they are 17th in total offense, it's just they keep making simple mental mistakes. Mistakes that should not even be made. And if Nebraska was a more disciplined team, they would have a much better record than 3-8. They are one of the best 3-8 teams of all time, if not the greatest 3-8 team of all time. I know it's not saying much, but Nebraska, they have a good chance to win this game, and even Vegas knows that as well, as they are currently, I believe it's a 3-point favorite at this point in the week at the time I'm recording this. And I'm going to do something that I rarely do on this channel, and that is pick Nebraska to win. Because I just think that this is the year that they're going to finally beat Iowa. I think everything is going to line up in their favor. It's senior day in Lincoln, and even though this season has been a lost cause for Nebraska with their record, there is still some positives to look at from this season. They have been in one-possession games all season long. Their biggest loss of the year is a 9-point loss to Ohio State, who I honestly think is the second best team in the country and the only team that can take down either Georgia or Alabama for the national championship. But with it being senior day, and those seniors, they're going to leave it all out there on the field, as I think they're going to end their careers on a positive note, and they will pick up a win over Iowa. And I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, too. I think it's going to be in the ballpark of 21-17, 17, 21 to 17, 17, 21 to 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 17, 21 The second of the two Friday afternoon games, North Carolina and North Carolina State. It has been a disappointing year for the Tar Heels. They had high expectations coming into the year. Ranked in the preseason top 10, Sam Howell was a Heisman favorite, if not the favorite, to lift up the Heisman Trophy at the end of the year. And then right away, they lose to Virginia Tech in their season opener. And it has been a disappointing year for them ever since. However, Sam Howell, since that Virginia Tech game, I think has been playing much better football the later on the season goes. 22 touchdown passes for Howell this season and only 8 interceptions, and 3 of them were in that Virginia Tech game. And he also has 717 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns. They are 10th in total offense. So they still got one of the better offenses in all of college football. Ty Chandler, the Tennessee transfer, over 1,000 rushing yards for the year, 13 touchdowns. And Josh Downs, 9th in the FBS with 1,198 receiving yards. For the Wolfpack, it has been a great season for them so far. Devin Leary's having an awesome season, 31 touchdown passes and only 5 interceptions. They rank 17th in total defense. And the Wolfpack are also 12th in third down conversion percentage, which I think is going to be a huge key for them in this game to extend drives. Because North Carolina, as much as their season has been disappointing, they're going to go at this just like the Wake Forest game. They're going to treat that like not only it's their bowl game essentially, not only their ACC championship game, but also a national championship game. This is their type of national championship game, ACC championship game, whatever you want to call it. And I think Sam Howell, most likely his last regular season game as a college athlete. And I think North Carolina, they pick up the win. I'm really looking forward to seeing this game. I would not be surprised if the Wolfpack indeed won this game, but I just have to go with what I've been more impressed with lately, and that is with North Carolina. So I'm going to go with the Tar Heels in this one. Next, we have Penn State and Michigan State. Michigan State is looking to bounce back after receiving a complete beatdown by Ohio State last week. For the Nittany Lions, however, the status of quarterback Sean Clifford is unknown at this point. However, last week in relief duty, Christian Veilleux, 15 for 24, 235 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns last week against Rutgers. However, Penn State's defense, they can keep their team in it. 4th in scoring defense, only giving up an average of 15.5 points per game. And I honestly think that Michigan State's offense, I think it's pretty solvable, because I think Ohio State proved that last week. And all you got to do is contain Kenneth Walker, and Michigan State is in trouble. Because Michigan State, they were in trouble against Michigan a few weeks ago. But Kenneth Walker, he dominated that game with 5 rushing touchdowns. And if you can contain Kenneth Walker, then you're going to have a really good chance to win. And Kenneth Walker is no longer leading the country in rushing yards. That now is Lou Nichols leading the country in rushing yards. Kenneth Walker, however, is second now with 1,498, as he was contained beautifully by Ohio State last week. The big issue with Michigan State is their defense, 120th in total defense, and that includes being last in pass defense. And they're allowing an average of about 25 points per game. So I'm going to say this. If Sean Clifford is in for Penn State this week, then I think Penn State is going to win this game. But if he's not, I'm going to go with Michigan State, because despite being last in the country in pass defense, this would be a backup quarterback that they're facing. So it's a prime opportunity to create pass breakups, try to get some interceptions, and set your offense up with good field position. So I know I like to commit to a pick, but it just depends on the status of Sean Clifford. But as I said, if Sean Clifford plays, Penn State wins, but if he doesn't, Michigan State wins. Next, we have the Iron Bowl, Alabama and Auburn. And this Iron Bowl doesn't seem to have the hype coming into it as it would have maybe about 3 weeks ago. Bo Nix is out for the Tigers, so now they're turning to TJ Finley, the backup, who honestly should probably be a starter with the way that Bo Nix has been not only this season, but throughout his entire college career. I mean, he has had his moments, but he has just had more negative moments than positive moments. And the first thing that you think about when you're a significant underdog like Auburn is, can your defense stay in it? And you've got the home crowd on your side. Can the home crowd encourage that defense? Can they fire up that defense to get some stops early? Although Auburn secondary will have their hands full with Jamison Williams. 1,218 receiving yards this season, and my pick to win the Biletnikoff Award this season, 6th in the FBS, and he is also averaging 20 yards a catch. And I think wide receiver 1 in the 2022 NFL draft class. And Alabama's offense is second in the country in scoring offense, only behind Ohio State, averaging 44.4 points per game. And Will Anderson leading the country in sacks with 13. For Auburn, can Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter get going with their running game? Because their running game is going to have to be huge in this game. Keep Alabama's offense on the sidelines. And if they can at least establish early on that they can move the ball and that they are playing with no fear, then you've got somewhat of a chance. However, Alabama is just playing much better since the loss to Texas A&M. And I think Alabama wins this one big. I'll be surprised if Auburn wins this. I'm not sure what to expect out of TJ Finley. But maybe Auburn will get a couple of touchdowns, but I just don't think they're going to win. I'm going to pick the Tide to win this one huge, which will ultimately set up Georgia and Alabama 1 versus 2 for the SEC championship next week. Next, we have Bedlam, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, and it is possible that they will face off next week in the Big 12 championship game as well. For the Sooners, despite their record, it has been a roller coaster season for them. They have already had their mulligan this season, losing a couple weeks ago to Baylor. Caleb Williams this season took over for Spencer Rattler, who was really hyped this season, not only as a Heisman candidate, if not one of the favorites, if not the favorite, along with Sam Howell. Anticipated to be the number 1 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, gets benched in the Texas game, and ever since the Texas game with Caleb Williams under center, the Sooners have been a much better team. However, they did have that bad game against Baylor, and it's important to keep in mind that Baylor completely outplayed Oklahoma, especially on the ground, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game as well, is the running game. Oklahoma State has one of the most underrated running backs in all of college football in Jaylen Warren. 1,078 rushing yards this season, 5th in the Big 12. Kenny Brooks is also a great running back as well, 972 rushing yards, 6th in the Big 12 conference. And he was one of the difference makers in that Texas game in the Red River Showdown. However, Oklahoma is 10th in scoring offense. So they are a top 10 scoring offense in all of college football. But Oklahoma State's defense, if they show out early in this game, establish themselves, force some turnovers, try to get Oklahoma into long yardage situations. Spencer Sanders has been pretty night and day for the Cowboys all season long. But Oklahoma State, they have been winning games with their defense. They are the best third down defense in all of college football, and they also lead the FBS in team sacks this season with 41. And with Oklahoma not playing the best football, not playing up to their standards so far this season, I am going to go with the upset. I'm going to pick Oklahoma State to win this matchup. I just think that their defense will be able to provide some short yardage situations for their offense, short field positions, and I think that will ultimately be the difference. I think they're going to be able to get to Caleb Williams, and if they do, it's going to be a long game for the Sooners. I'm going to pick Oklahoma State to pull off the upset. And finally, we have the game of the week, Ohio State and Michigan in the game. One of the biggest games of the year. Not only are there Big Ten implications on the line, but college football playoff implications on the line as well. With both of these teams having one loss this season to their record, this is essentially a quarterfinal matchup in the college football playoff. Now, despite this being one of the biggest rivalries, not only in college football, but in all of college sports, I would say the second biggest rivalry in all of college sports, only behind Duke and North Carolina basketball. This has been completely one-sided. Ohio State has completely dominated this rivalry. And if there were a year that Michigan could finally beat Ohio State, it would be this one. At least that's what you would have thought at the beginning of the year when Ohio State was struggling, giving up more than 30 points to Minnesota and Oregon. However, Ohio State has only given up more than 30 points in one game since then. And it was against Purdue, but it was more in garbage time when Ohio State was running away with that game anyway. They were already dominating. And ever since the Oregon game, Ohio State has just been completely playing on a different level. They have the best total offense in college football, the best scoring offense in college football, averaging about 47 points per game, the best receiving core in all of college football, a three-headed monster in Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Those three have combined for 187 receptions, 2,196 yards, and 30 touchdowns. C.J. Stroud this season has been looking like one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football as a freshman. 36 touchdown passes, only 5 interceptions, and 2 of them were against Nebraska a couple weeks ago, but he still managed to throw for over 400 yards in that game. So how can Michigan pull off the upset and finally beat Ohio State? Well, if they can get pressure on C.J. Stroud, David Ojabo, and Aiden Hutchinson, who Hutchinson is projected to be a top 15, top 10 pick in April's NFL draft, they have combined for 17 sacks this season. They also have the offense to stay in this game. 23rd total offense, including 15th in rushing offense. Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, they lead the Michigan backfield. Quarterback Cade McNamara has also been playing clean football all season long. Their defense is 10th in third down defense in college football. However, I feel like we do this every year with Michigan, where Michigan, they look like a good team coming into this. They find themselves with a great record of 10-1, maybe even 9-2. And it's always talked about, could this be the year they potentially beat Ohio State because of how good they've looked so far this season? And then they get to Ohio State, and Ohio State completely blows them out. I think that we are in for that again this season. I think Ohio State completely blows out Michigan here. I just think Michigan's defense is going to have a hard time with this receiving core of Ohio State. I expect Olave, Wilson, and Smith and Jigba to absolutely dominate this game. And I think Ohio State wins this matchup by at least 17 points. So those are my Week 13 college football predictions. Like, share, and subscribe. If there was a game that I did not predict that you would like me to predict, leave it in the comment section and I will respond to you. Until next time, have a wonderful day. If you aren't tuning in for the NFL predictions later on this week, have a great Thanksgiving. Until next time.